You're listening to the CIP podcast, the Study Abroadcast, Season 6, Episode 3. In this show, we explore the world of study abroad, offering advice, insights, and travel stories. I'm your host, Andrew. I'm currently in my fourth year of the Arts and Sciences program, a CIP peer helper, and I did an exchange semester at Linköping University in Sweden in the fall of 2023. Today, I am joined by Abby, a Guelph student who studied abroad at Kwansei Gakuin University in Japan. So, firstly, Abby, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your exchange experience?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. So I am also a fourth year student. I'm majoring in creative writing. So I studied abroad at Kangaku from March this year to August. So the semesters were kind of flipped. So our winter semester is January to April, but then for Japan, it's kind of the opposite. So the school is in Hyogo, Japan. And yeah, no, it was a really cool exchange. It was the bilateral exchange from Guelph.
As far as location of the school, was it more in like a rural area or more like
Hmm.
city?
That's a really good question because it's kind of both. I would say it's a little bit more suburb. So I think when we're thinking very urban, we're thinking more like part of Tokyo or Osaka. But in Hyogo, or the city specifically in Nishinomiya, it's kind of residential suburban. So it's definitely hustle and bustle, but I wouldn't consider it super busy by any means. But I mean, it was really nice where it was because you would be able to go to places that were more urban and then places that were more rural. So that's something that my friends and I were able to do a lot of. So Osaka, so like the really popular parts of it, that you see in movies and you hear about and see on TV, it would be like a 30-minute train ride to get there. So that was really cool to, have the easy access to that kind of hustle and bustle city life. But then, also go to Kyoto, where it's a little bit more laid back in some areas and not in like the super touristy parts that are like busy all year round. But yeah.
So would you say it's kind of similar to Guelph in terms of like size and closeness to urban center, or is it like completely different?
It's just hard to compare
Yeah.
the two. It's just the way things are laid out and how things are. There's just no comparison. In terms of size, I would say it's a little bit bigger, but in a weird way, it doesn't feel like that.
I see. Interesting. So yeah, you're talking about how things are like laid out a little bit differently and differences between Canada and Japan. What would you say was the largest cultural difference that you found living in Japan versus Canada?
Oh man, it's hard to say just one because everything, at least in my experience, how everything was in Japan versus Canada, it's like being on another planet. So I'd never been to Japan before. I'm half Japanese, and I have a very strong connection to my roots, and I grew up in a Japanese house. But even that couldn't prepare me for how different it was going to be when I got there. So everything is a lot cleaner, a lot quieter, very organized, and it kind of seems like everybody knows, what to do or how to
Mm.
act, like how to get on public transit. I know here, like if you get on the TTC, it's like a bloodbath. Like you have to just be ready to get on. But in Japan, you have to like line up on the platforms, and it's just very efficient, very organized. Everything is on time. You have to be on time. And I mean, in Japanese philosophy, it's basically like being on time is late. So that's literally one of the first things that we were told when we got there is being early is on time. I mean,
Mm.
that was something that wasn't hard for me because that's something that, like my Japanese mother like ingrained in my head from a very young age. But I know a lot of people that come from different walks of life, like a lot of my European and American friends, that was something that was very different for them. And I think for sure the biggest thing was the language. That was so, so difficult. So I had a friend that is also from Guelph, and he went on exchange with me. He's basically fluent in Japanese, so that wasn't as big of an obstacle for him. But for me, I didn't grow up with the language, and I didn't know a lot going in. So, I mean, no one basically speaks English there unless you're, at a big train station in Osaka or Tokyo. But I mean, if you're going grocery shopping in your little city, no one knows how to speak English. So that is very difficult. And I mean, Google Translate can only do so much for you.
So how would you navigate that then if you're in a country where you don't know the language and nobody's able to verbally communicate with you? Like, how did you go about navigating that
hmm
challenge?
I mean, I'll say this for sure is try and learn as much as you can before you
Mm.
come. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. Just, suggestions and advice for people. But I'll say this right off the bat is learn some basics before you come. That'll save you a lot of pain later, at least, having something. But yeah, Google Translate, even though it's not 100% accurate, it still will help you kind of get the point across. And I mean, it goes both ways. There was some situations that I was in where I would use Google Translate and then they would use Google Translate back. And it's like the same thing. It doesn't always translate over from English to Japanese in the same way. What they have to say in Japanese doesn't always translate to English.
Mm.
So I was staying actually with my friend and her mom when my flight actually got canceled on my way back because of the Air Canada strikes. And her mom doesn't speak English, so we would communicate through Google Translate, and it would be hard sometimes when my friend wasn't there to translate because it would just literally get lost in translation. So I think you kind of just have to do what you can, or even use gestures. Like I would point to like something, and then the hard part for sure is sometimes you just kind of had to put your big girl or your big boy pants on and just figure it out. Like
Yeah.
with the train, for an example, sometimes you just have to be like, all right, I missed the last two, but it kind of it is what it is. If I was trying to talk to the staff, like at the train station, and it just wasn't happening, I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out.
I think that's the thing with studying abroad is you learn very quickly. You have to be able to go and problem solve on the spot and put all of your reservations, or if you're introverted or shy, to the side. And like it really brings out a different side in you, I feel, for the
Oh,
better.
100%. Like there were so many times I was at random spots, whether it's at, the train station, where I would ask random people at any time of the day, whether it was 9 a.m. or 11:59 p.m., where am I? How do I get from X to Y? What platform do I need to be on? Like you just kind of have to. I mean, it was a little bit difficult in terms of doing that in Japan because people there are very reserved and you kind of don't do that.
Mm.
But again, that's the type of thing where you as an individual, no matter if you're introverted, extroverted, whatever, you kind of just have to do what you have to do.
Yeah. Just to rewind back a little bit,
Mhm.
what made you decide to study abroad in Japan to begin
Yeah.
with?
So for me, I didn't plan on studying abroad actually.
Mm.
I didn't even know it was a thing actually until I think the end of my first year. So I had friends at the time that were interested in studying abroad, and they were, looking through the schools. Like everyone is mostly interested in going to Europe, and I was like, oh, that's really really cool that we have the opportunity to do this. So I looked myself to see what schools were available, and I'm like, I wonder if they have anything in Asia or in Japan. And so Guelph, to send students, we're only partnered with one university, Kangaku. So I decided on a whim to apply for the next year because I just missed the window for winter 24. And I just really wanted to, as cliche as it sounds, kind of like spread my wings because I'd always been very close to home. I haven't done a ton of, international traveling. I've been very lucky to go to the States and to, a couple other places, for spring break and stuff like that, but nothing quite like this for an extended period of time. And because I'm half Japanese, and that's been something that's been very influential on my upbringing and on my character development and who I am as a person, I really wanted to delve into that, especially because I felt like I was missing a large piece of it, not having the language and never having gone to Japan at all. Because, I would talk to people and when I would tell them that, I'm half, and they would ask me, do you speak Japanese? Have you been to Japan? Do you have family there? The answer would always be no to, all of those questions. So, and I mean, if there's anyone that's, like mixed race that will end up listening to this, I think, they will feel very similar that we're stuck in this liminal space of, multiple identities. And so I wanted to be able to foster that a little bit more going to Japan and kind of that, just discovering myself, not only in terms of my, cultural and ethnic identity, but just me as a person, and to push myself out of, my comfort zone, never having going basically by myself. It was kind of an abrupt change in decision, but I really wanted to have, that growth overall.
Did you find that going to Japan did help you connect with your Japanese culture and your Japanese side more so than before you went to Japan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that it did in some ways, and then it also made me kind of face some of the hard realities also at the same time. So as wonderful and amazing as Japan is, and it was for me, the reality of it is it's a very homogenous society. So it can be a little bit difficult being, mixed race and not being Japanese. If you're not full Japanese, it can be a little bit difficult navigating that. So while it did for sure connect me to my roots, and, I was able to travel to, where my grandmother was from, her city, I do think that it made me realize that, I have to accept all sides of myself. But I mean, being able to learn some of the language for sure was helpful, and just being in the space, being just like living the life there and making Japanese friends, which is something that I didn't really get to do here, especially not really growing up. Meeting other people that were also mixed Japanese was really special. People that understand what it's like, being in the in-between, kind of. That's what I like to call it. And, doing some traditional, Japanese festivals, or wearing the clothes, and, even like just the mundane things of the body language and the gestures, and, what you come to understand as living life as a Japanese person. I think that for sure connected me. And, I just kind of felt it it sounds kind of like cliche and kind of weird, but like I just felt it in my body. And, even when I would share pictures with my friends and my family back home, and when I came back, they're like, yeah, like you're just different. You just have a different aura about you.
Wow, that was a really great answer. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Not to shift too dramatically, but I want to talk a little bit more about the logistics of studying abroad in Japan and kind of how that went. Would you be able to talk about your accommodation?
Yes, absolutely. So with Kangaku, there was a couple different options that you could go with. For me personally, I was in one of their international residences. So if you're doing research on studying at Kangaku, this one was called International Residence 2. So it's in a city that's neighboring to Nishinomiya. It's called Takarazuka. It's about a 30-minute train ride. It's in a really good spot. Where I was living was like 5 minutes to the train station to go anywhere, grocery store. So that was super awesome. So my residence was, I think we had about 30 people, communal kitchen. Everybody had their own bathroom, which was really awesome. Balcony to, hang out your laundry, because I will say this, Japan does not have dryers anywhere. So be prepared to leave your clothes outside. And if it rains and you're not home to take them in, oh well.
That's it.
And we had a super awesome res manager. So he would kind of just oversee everything, and we had a group chat on that. I don't know if you guys know this. It's an app called Line. I didn't know that this was a thing until
Mm.
I got to Japan. Because we don't really use it in Canada, but in Japan it's a huge thing. Anyway, so he would just like actively communicate with us on there, with any, updates. And we were expected to keep things super clean, which was honestly really refreshing. Having kind of that guidance with how to sort the garbage, because that's very different there too also. And kind of those expectations are different, but honestly I feel like that was a good part of it, adjusting to life in Japan. But yeah, I had a very chill, relaxed, I guess kind of like apartment. It was very cozy, very comfortable, in a really good location, and it was with all different sorts of international students. Some people that were staying for a full school year.
Yeah.
And, I had people living in this res from everywhere, from the States, from Poland, Ukraine, France, Norway, just everywhere. It was so cool.
Yeah, with studying abroad, I feel like you experience more than just the culture that you're going to, because I find that when people study abroad, they kind of form their own community of international students from all different kinds of places, and you get to experience all of their different cultures and their ways of living too, which I think is super cool.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Seeing that like mixing and mingling of quote unquote borders and cultures and norms was so interesting.
Mm.
Like I had a bunch of Italian people actually living in our res too, and they would literally make like pasta and stuff in our kitchen.
Mm.
It was so cool.
And with your accommodation, was this found through the school or did you externally find this accommodation?
No, so this is specifically through Kangaku. So
Mm.
these international residences are like owned by the school. They're just not on campus or in the city. So mine was only one of many international residences that are associated with Kangaku. So there was another one that was actually just up the road from me that some of my friends lived in. And then there was another kind of set of international and also Japanese residences closer to the university that more of my friends were living in. And then there was also options for homestays that one of my friends from Guelph, he did that. So there was a bunch of different options. You could look for accommodations that weren't associated with the school that you could find on your own, but it wasn't really recommended, and I didn't meet anybody that did do that.
Were these accommodations guaranteed for you? Like once you accepted your nomination, they said, okay, you have this if you want it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
They would find you a spot. It wasn't a guarantee where you would be, like what residence or if you would get homestay if you wanted it, but you would have a house. You would have somewhere to live, guaranteed, yes.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Okay, how did you find the cost of living, whether it be like groceries, your rent, your like going out activities, stuff like that?
Most things, and what's really nice about Japan, I mean, like anything, it has pros and cons. It was a lot more affordable in my opinion. Groceries, not too expensive. I would say they're probably half the price of what they are here. But I mean, it really depends. I could go to the grocery store, and as long as I didn't buy like fresh fruit, I would probably spend $20, maybe. I mean, again, that would really depend on what you're getting, how much of it. But, certain items would be a little bit more expensive. So let's look at fruit, fresh fish. That was a little bit more expensive. I don't know why fruit was so expensive, but I didn't eat fruit for 6 months. I
Wow.
wasn't gonna do it. I wasn't going to, yeah, no, it was very expensive. In terms of rent, it was also probably about half of what I pay in Guelph.
Hmm.
So I think I was spending 60,000 yen a month, I think. So that's about $600 Canadian. And that's probably about half of, I think, what a lot of people have to pay in Guelph. So that living is 100% more affordable there. And I
Hmm.
mean, part of that is because the Japanese yen is a lot smaller and a lot weaker than the Canadian dollar, but still, I would say money and life there is a little bit more forgiving and flexible and like enough to comfortably live. Or I could go to the convenience store and get, an onigiri for breakfast and it would be like $1
Mm.
Canadian.
Did you find that you had to adjust your diet based on what kind of foods were available or the cost of foods relative to what you're eating in Canada?
For me, basically all I eat is like chicken and vegetables. So I
Mm.
mean, it was fairly easy to find, though the hardest thing for me is everything is very rice heavy, and as much as I love rice, sometimes it was hard to find the balance between, like all like the food groups. So like I would get a bento box and like it would be like 5 grams of, chicken and the rest of it would be rice. And that's all fine and great. And I would say overall that things are pretty balanced, but that's one thing that I for sure noticed. I'm fairly used to, Japanese cuisine and Japanese food, growing up with it. So that wasn't too much of a surprise, just, what I was finding. Some of my friends were like anti-fish, hated it. I love
Mm.
it. I eat it all the time, so that wasn't difficult. I also love to buy things in bulk. Like, when you go to Costco and like you just like buy a bunch of food and stuff and like that'll last you for like the month.
Mm.
I found it really difficult to do that and for things not to go bad. So, I would buy, let's just say, like 2 chicken breasts. I found it really hard to, cook it, eat it, store it in enough time that it would stay good. And also, things just came in really small packages. Like I would go through things really fast. So I would like have to keep going back to the store. That's one thing that I found kind of difficult. But in terms of what I was actually consuming, I wouldn't say it changed too much, just I was eating way more rice.
Okay, so very rice heavy diet in
Yeah, so I
Japan.
hope you guys like that.
Yeah, if you're planning on going to Japan, you should probably like rice. Okay, did you get into any traveling while you were abroad to any like neighboring areas or like th the country of Japan itself?
Oh my God, yeah. I definitely did a lot of traveling, and I was very lucky to be able to do that. So being in, Takarazuka where I was living and then also Nishinomiya where the school is, they're smaller cities, but they're very central to, other bigger spots, like I was saying, Osaka. And public transit is so good there that like you can take it basically anywhere. You might have to transfer a bunch of times, but I mean, it's fairly easy to, figure it out. Google Maps is your next best friend. That'll help you, see what station you have to be at, which, train or bus to connect you to the next route, to get to wherever you want to go. So for sure, my friends and I would do a lot of weekend traveling to, Osaka, Kyoto, Nara. Like they're all within the Kansai area over. So we have what's known as Golden Week in Japan, where we had a couple days off. So some of my friends and I, we took a bit of a longer trip to Hiroshima, and so we actually took the bullet train to get there. So that was
Cool.
really cool. Yeah, because it's a little bit farther. So those farther distances, you have to kind of plan your travel out a little bit more. And there I actually visited my cousin, who's a teacher on JET, the Japanese exchange teaching program. So I was able to kind of see what life is like, living in a different prefecture, in a different area completely, because each city, each prefecture has kind of a different thing, a different vibe, different thing that it's known for. Even the dialects change, Kansai Ben, people in the entire Kansai region have a very specific dialect. So even, listening to conversations or how words differ, or sometimes even sentence structures can kind of change depending on where you are. Kansai Ben is very difficult, and a lot of people outside of Kansai Ben don't understand what's being said.
Mm.
So that was interesting, kind of living in it and adapting your hearing to Kansai Ben versus, something else. I also went to Tokyo. I went to Sendai, which is in the Miyagi prefecture. That's a little bit north of Tokyo. I went to Okinawa actually. It's one of the like islands that's southwest of like the mainland. So that was super, super cool. My friends and I went during the hottest time of the year. But I mean, it was so beautiful. The water was incredible. It's all like beachy, and it was so much fun. I think those were some of my top places that I went. So I was kind of all over the map.
Yeah, it sounds like Japan is like culturally diverse enough and is a large enough country geographically where you can travel so much within it and still be satisfied in discovering new things.
Oh, 100%. And even then, you won't see or do everything.
Right. Yeah. And would you say it's kind of like Canada in the sense with the provinces having their own like little differences and like cultural differences?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, you know, Japanese culture stays the same no
Mm,
matter kind of where you go within the country. But certainly, you know, trademarks are different. The landscape is 100% different. You know, if I'm going from the heart of Osaka to Wakayama, that's going to look a lot different and feel a lot different. You know, it's a city to a seaside town, that's a lot different. But I would say, you know, the norms and the culture stay pretty similar. It's just a different vibe. It's a
right.
different, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Cool. I think that's a really great way to do your semester abroad because I think a lot of people want to go to Europe or like a more central location where they can travel to a bunch of different countries. But I like being able to just stay in one country and really get the breadth of that experience in the culture. And because you spent how many months? 5, 6 months?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, which is a really great amount of time to spend in a country that you wouldn't get from just traveling.
No, 100%. And I mean, you can still, if you wanted to, you can still travel to other Asian countries. You know, I had friends
Yeah.
that went to Korea while they were there. So, you know, you have that opportunity to do that too.
Okay, so just shifting over to more of just like your average day to day,
Mhm.
what was your average like weekend or day off like? Like what kind of activities were you engaging in? What were your experiences with that?
hmm So, day off, man, what is that? I would for sure try to get in some studying, just in terms of really hammering in the language, because like if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it, you
Hmm.
know? So trying to, you know, just keep that really fresh. Also, sometimes, you know, my Japanese friends would want to take me to like the mall. So being able to be immersed in that kind of environment and that kind of life where that's normal. Whereas for me, it's a little bit more of a novelty and different because that's not something that I'm used to. So kind of being able to see the city and life through their eyes and through their perspective was really interesting. Sometimes it would just be hanging out with my friends in our lounge area of our res, you know, if it was a rainy day, we would, you know, study, watch a movie. And then on more like exciting weekends, we would take a weekend trip, you know, to Ine in Kyoto, or we would go shopping in Osaka, or we would have, you know, a beach day in Kobe. We went there for actually, I had a lot of American friends and they wanted to go do sparklers for the 4th of July. So we went
Mm.
to a beach in Kobe and we did that. So, I mean, your weekend can look however you want it to, basically, you know. And I would have people in my res I would literally always see them with a suitcase going somewhere, you know? So it can be
Yeah.
whatever you want it to be.
Okay, so no shortage of experiences or activities or things to
Absolutely
do.
not.
Yeah, on
Absolutely
your
not. No.
semester abroad in Japan. Okay, you talked about studying a little bit. I think we should talk about the studying part of study abroad. How would
Yes.
you compare the academics in Japan to Canada or Guelph?
So it was not what I was expecting, surprisingly. I thought that it would just be school and only school. There would be no work-life balance because that's part of Japanese culture, is it's very, you know, work intensive. Whether you're in academics or professional, you know, in like your actual career, it's very, you know, work all the time. And I was ready to do that and I was expecting that. But as an international and exchange student, it wasn't like that. I actually found it very manageable. And if anything, I found it way lighter than my
Mm.
workload at Guelph right now. And I think part of that is because, I was using up my electives that I still had from Guelph in Kangaku because they didn't have any courses that were A of my year level. So the courses I took there were all first and second year, whereas, I was a third going into fourth year. So they didn't have anything that was my year level or that was associated with my degree or in my major. So I was taking language and cultural classes. And, while we had, a lot of quizzes, tests, and assignments, I found it quite manageable, actually, you know. And I look back on it and I'm like, oh man, I missed that because we're partway through our semester right now and I'm dying.
Yeah.
But I think it looks a lot different for international and exchange students than, your local students because a lot of my local Japanese friends, that are in their third, fourth year studying some of the really popular degrees at Kangaku, like law and business, econ, international studies is huge, is huge. Their course load is a lot different. It looks a lot different. The expectations are different. Plus, they have, their part-time jobs and they're looking for employment or getting ready to apply to grad school, or I had a friend that, had a bunch of interviews in Tokyo to start working as soon as she's graduated. So, I mean, that plays a huge part in it too. But, as a Guelph student that studied abroad for a semester, it's a lot different. I would say it's much easier.
I totally agree. And when I did my study abroad in Sweden, I was kind of in a similar boat where I only took electives that were just kind of like fluffy courses that like weren't as content or intensive, and which did differ from Sweden because Sweden does have a very robust education system. And I knew some Swedish people who they had like an exam that was like 8 hours long where they had to bring their lunch to it. So I think people on exchange tend to have a little bit of an easier time with academics. But again, it is what you make it to be. So if you plan to use all of your electives, you will have more free time and just more flexibility with the courses you take.
Oh, exactly.
Okay, so you talked about having some Japanese friends. How was your experience overall making friends during your time abroad?
It definitely can differ and kind of like what you were saying about academics. When it comes to, your social life, it's also what you make it. So there's definitely a cultural and language barrier. Or I don't even want to say barrier, but it's a factor for sure when you're making friends with Japanese people. So for someone like me that is not very proficient or fluent in Japanese, it's a big obstacle for sure. Being able to communicate on a native level just adds that layer of, comfort and intimacy. And it just makes things a lot easier, because you don't have to translate things. Things don't, get lost in translation, whether from something you're saying or vice versa. It just makes it so much more fluid to be able to do that. Because, even some of my Japanese friends that were fairly good at English, it's just easier for them to be able to speak Japanese. And like that's how you can get a better sense of their character when you can just speak their native language. Whereas, I would have other friends that were a little bit more fluent in English, and then it wasn't as big of a factor. Part of it too is some of my Japanese friends have studied abroad in more Western countries. So that influence also has a big impact on, how we interacted because they had or they could relate to me a little bit more on that Western mindset. So I had a friend that studied abroad in Australia for a year. That changed her outlook and her interest in making friends with international students. But then, or a lot of people, like Japanese students, would be very shy. And that's a big part of the culture too, is kind of just being a little bit more reserved and conservative. So, some of the biggest pieces of advice that my more outgoing and kind of international Japanese friends would tell me is if you want to make Japanese friends, you need to make the first move. And being able to have a little bit of Japanese is very helpful. It kind of takes like that pressure off because they're nervous to speak English, especially if they don't know how to or if it's not super strong. And just because I think also people with Western influences can be a lot, very kind of out there, that can be a little bit intimidating to Japanese students. So just having like an idea of, cultural awareness and norms is very helpful. And I would also have, some of my closer Japanese friends introduce me to more of their friends because they're interested. They want to, talk to you and mingle with you and learn about, your culture and where you're from. But it can be very hard for them to kind of like come out of their comfort zone and come out of their shell to do that. But then on the other hand, when I'm making friends with other international students, that was very easy. You know, I think it can be easy if you're, very talkative and extroverted like myself, or even if you're not, because the way that our program was made is we all came in at the same time. We had group activities together. Living with other international students was helpful. So like we were all mingling and talking from day one, no matter where you were from. So that was very helpful. And our international community, no matter where you were from, was very strong. We would all be hanging out and talking in like the student lounge that was on campus, or we would go to each other's residences, we would travel together. So there's no worry about, in my opinion, about making friends no matter who you are.
I totally agree. I had the same experience, I would say, where with the other exchange students and other international students, it was so easy because everybody's looking for friends. Like most people go alone and they're all in the same boat. They're looking to learn about other people's cultures, and it's so easy to connect with people that way. However, similar to, as we were saying with Japanese people, Swedish people are very reserved and introverted, and they're never going to make the first move or approach you or come up to a group. So you definitely have to take the initiative if you want to get to
Hmm.
learn, know more about Swedish people or make friends with Swedish people. So
Hmm.
that's kind of interesting. What would you say was your favorite memory from your exchange?
Oh,
That's a hard question.
that's such a hard question, and
I know.
honestly, I wouldn't be able to give you just one because I just took so much out of it, and it wouldn't give everything justice if I
Yeah.
picked one, because there was so much that I got from each thing, whether it was like the most extraordinary travel experience I ever had versus, just the more quieter, intimate moments of, being with my friends, making brunch with them after a night out, in our kitchen. That's something that I'll probably always remember. Or the some of the bigger things, a group of my friends and I, we climbed to the top of Mount Fuji. Like, there's just so much. I couldn't tell you one. And from each thing, that memory is tied with those people that I was with, and the feeling that you kind of got from it. Or another one, we went to a summer festival in Osaka, and that's a very popular thing in Japan, is they have what's called Matsuri. So it's like summer festival. And we watched the fireworks on this bridge. And all my friends and I, we were dressed in yukata. So that's Japanese clothing. It's like the summer version of a kimono. And we were all standing on the bridge, so hot. It was
Mm.
so hot. But like we were having the best time, and like the fireworks were incredible. So yeah, those are some that stick out to me right now. But there is just so much to take away, both, with who you met and also just personally. Like I feel like I just see the world a lot different, and it has just changed my perspective on everything, and it has adjusted, the course of where my life will take me now.
Yeah, I mean, going on exchange totally changes your worldview, and I think it gives you so much more confidence in your ability to interact with others
Mhm.
and to go on adventures and just like put yourself out there a little bit more. And I find that whenever I talk to exchange students, that they kind of have the same response as you. It's like you can't really pick one favorite memory. Like it's impossible. Like the whole experience as a whole is just so incredible that you
Mhm.
can't
Yeah.
really narrow it down to like, oh, this was like my one big takeaway. As we move to wrap up this episode, do you have any advice for those considering studying abroad in Japan particularly, or just in general?
Yeah. Well, kind of what I said at the beginning, and I'm really gonna emphasize this. If
Yeah.
you're gonna study in Japan specifically, get your Genki book, read it, study it. Get a Japanese tutor, I don't know, but have some knowledge of the language. It doesn't have to be fluent, You will not be fluent. I'm still not fluent after 6 months of living there, but have something to kind of give yourself a little bit of peace of mind that you'll maybe be able to say something or pick up something. So that for sure I will say, and I'll say this for Japan specifically, but I think that it can, be applicable to no matter where you go. But being ready, open, and prepared to really open your mind and want to learn the culture and adjust yourself to that culture. At the end of the day, you're in another country, you're in their country. So being able to, have that, cultural awareness and want to adjust yourself to that, I think is really important. And I mean, that was a really big thing in Japan, being quiet on the train, for an example, or just, the everyday things that you have to pick up and learn because no one is going to tell you to do those things. It's one of those things you have to learn by observation how to do. Like, for an example, the train thing,
Yeah.
or walking on certain sides of the road or of the escalator. Just being ready to do that. And just, I think, be open and ready for anything, no matter what it is. I was a person before I went on exchange that always needed a plan and hated unpredictability.
Mm.
But one of my biggest key takeaways and what I want people going on exchange, no matter where they're going, is just go with it. Just go with it. As cliche as that is, I was like a control freak, but now I'm like, kind of whatever happens, happens. Like, just, something will work out in the end as it should. So just go with it. It's okay if you're terrified. I was honestly having a crash out the night before I left.
Yeah.
So no, or at the airport. Like, things will be messy. I missed my connecting flight on my way there. It was my first time, traveling alone, let alone abroad. So let it be messy. Let it be how it's gonna be. Just
Yeah.
do it.
That's really it. You just have to do it, and you just have to be open to as many experiences as possible to just really seize the moment, because studying abroad is like such like a life-changing, and I don't want to say once in a lifetime, but it's like this doesn't happen often. So while you're there, you really have to try and be as open as you can to seizing as much of the moment as possible.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
It's very rare.
Okay, is there anything else that you want to add about your experience or that we haven't covered or that you think people should know about studying abroad in Japan?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add here at the end that I think people need to be prepared for what you're going to feel coming back from
Mm.
exchange. It was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever experienced, having to leave my friends and the country when I was on exchange. It was a very emotional last couple of weeks when people were starting to leave and when we were moving out of our residences and packing and all that. It's very, very difficult. Because as you were saying, this is a very rare opportunity, and this is the only time that all of these people and all of us will be together in one place doing the same thing, and now we're all going back to the lives that we had before we left. So I think people need to be ready and have the tools ready to deal with the emotions that come with coming back in the reverse culture shock. Especially with coming from Canada to Japan and then Japan to Canada, there was a huge reverse culture shock, and I still feel it 2 months after being back. So being prepared for that, and then also that it's okay to feel that way. I still have the post-Japan depression
Mm.
even after all this time because it just has such a huge impact on you as a person. And, to miss the country, miss the place, miss the school, miss the people. So that is something I feel like, on the courses that we have to do going and also coming back from abroad, they talk about, but you don't really feel it until you're experiencing it. So I didn't really take that part seriously, the coming back and all the feels you would have. But oh man, buckle up.
Yeah,
But there are support systems out there to help you.
for sure. It is such a unique phenomenon to experience where it's like, okay, I'm spending every day with these people and with this community that I've built around myself. And then I'm just gonna leave and I might never see these people ever again. Like obviously you'll stay in touch with some people, but like you won't see everybody. Like this was the last time I'll see you in my life.
Yeah, yeah, man. Oh, it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. And then also about coming back, I remember coming back and entering like the Toronto airport and something like so small, but just like being able to understand the people around me and what they're saying is it's like,
Yes.
wait a
Huge. Oh
minute.
my God. Yes. Oh my God. That happened to me.
Yeah.
So I took a flight from Kansai to I think it was Vancouver. And then back to Pearson. And as soon as I landed in Victoria, or oh my God, Victoria, Vancouver, one of the
Yeah.
two, I don't remember. I was like, wait a second, everything's in English,
Yeah,
and
it's kind of
no
unsettling.
one is Japanese.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, that was a crazy experience. So I 100% feel you on that one.
That's so funny. Okay, well, that is all we have for today. Thank you again, Abby, for sharing your stories and advice. If you're looking for more information about studying abroad, you can attend one of our info sessions happening weekly on Mondays at 1 p.m. and Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Additionally, you can go to our website, uoakwealth.ca/CIP, or send us an email at cip@uoakwealth.ca. And stay tuned for our next episode where we look to unpack the study abroad experience further.